taking all this weed. Make these nightmares go away. Make these nightmares go away. If I believed in praying, I would pray my heart away. Went through so much drama, just trying to outlive my pain. This last one it told me, had me feel like I'm going insane. I just wanna be okay, but this world is evil.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Straight Outta BS podcast. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. I'm like blown away. This is crazy. I never thought I was going to have 1,000 videos on even one video, and they're just blowing up. So, yeah, keep on sharing the videos, liking them, getting the word out there about these places. Thank you to my Patreon members who have been supporting me for like pretty much since the beginning. I really appreciate you. If anybody's interested in supporting me like that, links are in the description. Merch is available too. I've had several people reach out to me about supporting the podcast, wearing the shirts and whatnot. So yeah, that is available too. Links are in the description. And just thank you guys for all of the support. I want to do a moment of silence for the person still suffering with intrusive thoughts or addiction or anything like that. So on the count of 3, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what years.
My name is Taylor, and I went to Turnabout Ranch in 2010, and I went to Heartlight Ministries in 2011.
Okay, can you walk us through like what like growing up? How was your childhood? What led up to you being sent there? Did you know you were going to be sent there? Walk us through that.
So, I grew up with my mom and my dad, and I have other siblings, but they did older, younger, don't live at home. Just my sister, and my dad died when I was 8, and that pretty much, I think it really rocked my mom's world. So I think I remember her being normal when I was a little kid, and then I remember the like moment when she switched, and it was like right in that time. So after that, me and my sister, we just did not have a good relationship with my mom at all. To my memory, like I remember times when she would call DCFS, and like I was little, and she would just be like, "Come take my kids, I don't want them anymore." And my sister would like, she was my older sister, so she would stick up for me all the time, or she would send us to like parent other people's houses to live because she like couldn't handle it for whatever. I really don't know the reason that she said for herself. And so when I was about 13, my mom sent my sister to Second Nature Blue Ridge, and
The wilderness one? Was that the wilderness one? Sorry.
Yeah, the one where you like hike through the woods for several months. And I was actually home when that happened. So I watched the escort service thing. I watched the whole thing. They took her really early in the morning out of her bed. And it was like what you hear about all the time. My mom's just standing there watching. She's freaking out. I was freaking out. I tried to like stop them from taking her. And then they forcibly removed me from my own house and put me outside and locked me out. So I knew where she was at. My mom like told me she had been acting rebellious, but she was in this transition where she was finding out that she was gay, and my mom's very Christian, and it was just like hard for her. My mom wouldn't accept it. So I think that might have been why she was sent away. My mom might have a different story about that. But she went to there, and then when she got done with Second Nature, she went to Vista Magna in near Salt Lake City, which Praise, I believe, has been shut down. But I went to go visit her on her like parent family, whatever you would call it there.
The PC one or whatever?
Yeah, probably. I'm not really sure what kind of like system that program was, but it was an RTC, so it was inside. And I remember the therapy, like, I don't remember much, but I remember the therapy session, and they had me sit on it, like, for some reason. And I remember it being really traumatic. Like, they were tearing my sister apart, and she was, like, agreeing with them. And I was like, this is horrifying. Like, this is fucked up. And then she stayed past her 18th birthday recently to find out that they told her that they were going to drop her off at a homeless shelter if she decided to walk at 18. So when she came back, she's like my fucking superhero. She wrote me notes every day in the wilderness and took like a selfie with a disposable camera that was like Taylor 28 days in the woods, Taylor 48 days in the woods, like. And when she got back, she pretty much told me, Mom's gonna send you to one of these places, like, just so you know. So I pretty much knew it was gonna happen. I just didn't know when. So I'd keep like a go bag on me. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but like I was ready to run away if they tried to grab me. And so, yeah, a couple years went by, and I was the only one at home with my mom. I didn't like living with her. It was like a prison in itself. I wasn't allowed to do anything, see friends, like have a phone, watch TV. I would stay in my room all day. Like, I was in high school, you know, I was about 16, 17. And then she'd been drug testing me since I was 13. So finally I was like, fuck you. If you think that I'm this horrible kid that's like stealing and selling drugs and doing them, like, I'm going to just do that then.
Yeah, might as well.
You know, I don't know what it was, just like exciting too, because I was so sheltered and wasn't allowed to do anything. But I lived in Atlanta. Like, I went to a high school really, really inside of Atlanta. Like, things were fun and not just illegal fun. So I started doing those things, and I started it wasn't anything that I, as an adult now, would like send my child somewhere for. It just felt really normal. Like, I was not even the bad kid at school. So I got into one situation that did really spark everything, which was that I was just being fucking stupid, and I was, taking random pills from someone at school, and I got super fucked up, and I was like, I think I need to go home. And so I had my friend drive me home because I thought that was responsible, so that I didn't drive. And then someone hit us on the way home in my car that I'd just purchased from my mom. So it was still kind of in her name. It was half mine, half hers. Sorry, there's a fly. And so yeah, I got a felony for that because the lady was freaking me out, threatening my life when she hit us. She like pulled around after she saw it was teenagers, because I was like, I gotta check the damage. Long story short, I ran because she scared me, said she was gonna ruin my life, and I was really fucked up at the time. And so I ran, and they got me with a hit and run felony and tried me as an adult at 17. So the trial hadn't finished yet. So that happened. And then about a week later, my mom found out about it, and it was just like, I can't live here anymore. Like, she's going to send me somewhere. It's not just one of those places, like a boarding school in general. And I just couldn't. So I ran away from home, and then that pissed her off greatly, and she told the parents that I was staying with that it was cool if I stayed there like a few weeks later, as long as I went to school. And then the next day when I went to school is when I was taken.
Okay. And those pills that you took, do you know what they were? Was it ecstasy? Was it opiates? Do you know?
I think it was probably opiates. I know it's so fucked up to laugh about now, but like, I have to laugh about some of the stupid shit I did, and sometimes the trauma, but like, we refer to that, me and my friends, because we're still friends, like, we have been for 30 years now. We were just like such at a weird point in our life. It was like a drug cocktail where we were just like, what is this? And would throw it back because we didn't know really what it was, but I'm assuming it was opiates. It definitely wasn't like Molly or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Walk us through the transportation. Were you transported? Sounds like you were. Walk us through that whole thing, how it made you feel, anything like that.
So yeah, I feel fortunate in my transport because, like, I saw my sisters, and I know a lot of people get taken and sometimes sedated in the middle of the night, which sounds like fucking horrifying. But I went to school that next day. Like, she told me it would be okay, so I wouldn't catch a truancy charge too. And when I was in my very first period class, I'm talking like 15 minutes in. I'm from Atlanta. I went to Atlanta Public Schools. So there's always APD, just like walking around the school because, I don't know, we had metal detectors. It was that kind of school. And I was in that class, and Atlanta Police Department came in and was like, "We want Taylor Crawford." And I immediately knew it was going on. But I got up, and I told my teacher, if I don't come back in a few minutes, like, please come get me. Like, something's really bad. And he was like, "Oh, whatever, you probably just got in trouble again." And so and he was cool, like, but he just dealt with tons of students every day. So yeah, I got up and I went with them, and they didn't handcuff me, the police. They just held my hands as I walked through the school, and I was like trying to come up with reasons to leave, and they wouldn't. It's like, gotta change a tampon. No. Like, locker. No. Like, I think I'm gonna throw up. And they were all like, no. And so then they took me to the principal's office, where my mom was sitting in a chair crying. My principal was really confused looking. And then there's these two large Samoan, I'm guessing, women standing there, and they immediately handcuffed me with the zip tie handcuffs. And they were like, "We're taking you." And I looked at my mom and said, "What the fuck is going on?" Even though I knew. And the transporters, the only thing I really remember about that was the transporters looked at her and were like, "Tell her where she's going, Judy. Like, tell her where she's going." And she looked at me and was like, "They're taking you to a better place." And I looked at her and said, "Are you gonna fucking kill me?" Because, like, that's what that sounds like a better place to a Christian. And I was like super like confused. And so then, yeah, they just took me, they put me in a car with child locks, and then they drove me to the airport. They had me not handcuffed through the airport because it looked really weird, obviously, to have a child handcuffed when you're not wearing a uniform. Mm-hmm. And I remember them telling me, like, do not, because a lot of people ask me, like, why didn't you ask for help in the airport? And it's like, they told you, like, if you cry for help, no one will listen. Like, if you try to run, like, we'll fucking tackle you. Like, the police know, like, they're not on your side. Like, we can't catch you trying to, like, ask random people for help. Because I definitely was going to. So yeah, they just told me pretty much don't say anything and act normal. So I did. And then it was weird because those transporters, sorry, my dog was jumping up behind me. These transporters were the same ones who took my sister. Yeah. And they kept mentioning that. And they were like, when one of their threats of, like, in the airport initially is that they were saying, like, the reason that we're going to fucking have to put you in handcuffs if you act up in the airport too is because, like, your sister was a little bitch. Your sister was a little bitch. They kept saying that. And I was like, why do you, like, and then I put it together that those were the same people. And they were saying, like, your sister was violent and all this stuff. I've talked to my sister. We're, like, best friends. That never happened. She was very compliant and did what they said. So yeah, they took me to the airport, which went to Salt Lake. And then from there, they rented a car and child locked me, handcuffed me in the car with the zip ties. And then they drove me to Escalante, Utah, where Turnabout Ranch is, but they made, like, several wrong turns or something. So I guess it took, like, double the time to get there. So I ended up getting there in the middle of the night, which is not really normal, I guess. But yeah, it was really weird. Like, the whole time I was in the car, those are some of the most vivid memories I have, is just, like, being in the back seat of that car. Somehow I had my iPod, and I, like, figured out a way to, like, get one ear plug in and just press play on it, and it was like, whatever, the iPod Shuffle or whatever it was. So it just kept repeating the same two songs, and, like, I'll never forget them. And it was Eyes on Fire remixed by Zed's Dead. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, that song.
And there was, like, a lyric in it that was like, how far can you send a fishing or something like that. And I just remember like feeling my friends in the car, and they were like surrounding me, like some Harry Potter shit, being like, it's gonna be okay, like we're gonna protect you. Because my friends all knew it was happening, it was gonna happen too. And then the other song was like a stupid song by Animal Collective, but I just listened to him over and over again for like 6 hours because I knew like I'm probably not gonna be able to have music there. And I don't know, it was like the only comfort because I was just sitting there in silence. They didn't talk to me like or ask me if I need to use the bathroom or anything.
When you were on the plane, what was the arrangement like? Were they sitting on either side of you, or like how did they have you situated in the plane? I've always been curious about that.
Okay, so it was actually really weird because I guess they couldn't get us seats together. So I sat in a, you know how there's like the 3-row ones?
Yeah.
They were behind me, but I was in the middle of a 3-row one.
In the middle? In the center?
Of random people.
Interesting.
And I was still in handcuffs in the airplane, not the airport. But like the people next to me, like I wanted to say something, but I knew they were behind me. And it also was weird because I was in handcuffs. So it was like, I kind of feel like these ladies don't trust me. You know, like I clearly look like a threat right now because I'm in fucking zip ties.
Yeah. Okay. What do you remember about when you got to Turnabout Ranch? Also, what year were you there?
I was taken on October 27th, 2010.
Okay. Walk us through when you got there. What happened? Did they buddy you up with somebody to show you the rules? Did they give you a rule manual? Did they tell you the rules?
So yeah, when I got there, okay, so yeah, let me put this into a better, because I got there in the middle of the night, it was a little different.
Yeah.
You know, just because I don't think they have a very strict protocol of everything they do there, even according to the parents. Because this weekend, for the first time, I know you saw this, but I spoke to my mom about this experience for the first time in 13 years on Saturday, which was like super cool. And she like listened to me and was really wants to help and is sorry. But yeah, she told me that that's not something they normally do. She even said that they told her that. So I got there in the middle of the night, and when you get to Turnabout, your first level, it's a level thing, is called Roundy Camp, and it's level 1 and level 2 at Roundy Camp. And since it's kind of like a wilderness, I wouldn't describe it as an RTC or a wilderness. It's like a ranch-ish situation.
Like kind of like a hybrid?
Yeah, it's like if those two programs created one weird fucked up program. So Roundy Camp was essentially Escalante, by the way. I don't know if you're like familiar. It's southern Utah, so it's like in the middle of nowhere, like very much. I think it's like 2 hours to the next town, and it's a very small town. I would say, my opinion, this is not factual. I'm pretty sure that everyone who lives in that town has some sort of association with Turnabout, whether they're family, they work there, or they know someone who works there, or whatever. So yeah, it's not big, really, really long dirt road. You go past the main campus and then you go down this dirt road. It's in the mountains and the canyons or whatever. Just rural. And there's the barn or the little lodge thingy called Roundy. And it's like, I don't know, like a log cabin from the 1800s with like no electricity. And then outside of it is this weird, like, it looks like one of those Zen sand gardens, but it's like non-Zen. It's like a sand garden, and you have to like, there's like little pathways along it that have to be raked in this certain direction. And inside of that are these half little teepees surrounded by rocks that make a circle. And so that's the rock with the circle is called the impact circle, and that's level 1. So I got in the middle of the night, and there's night staff there, which is like just the random people who sit and watch you while you sleep. And there's other kids there, I guess, but I didn't see anyone except for these kids laying on the ground, like next to the eating table. And they all had lights in their faces and were just like wearing regular clothes. And this dude, I don't know what his name was, I can't remember, but he was one of the 2 night staff guys. He told me to take my clothes off, and I was like, I'm a very hard-headed person, and I also just knew what I was getting myself into, and I was like, I'm not playing this fucking game. Like, I'm not doing what you want. Like, I'm not. I'm gonna be the kid that doesn't do it. So I was like, hell no, like, try. I really provoked him. I was like, hell no, try to fucking take my clothes off of me. I dare you, bitch. You know, like, do not touch me. And this man was really aggressive, tried to, and I straight up just socked him in the jaw with my fist immediately upon arrival. And so then I remember he didn't retaliate physically, which was really strange, from based on my rest of my time there. But he looked at me and just laughed, like, really sadistically, and was like, have fun in the snow then. Because I was wearing, like, I was in Atlanta. I was wearing, like, a spaghetti strap dress thing, like a pair of shoes. And so he was basically saying, like, you don't want to be strip searched and put in our outfit, then you're going to just sit there in what you're wearing. So then I just slept on the ground with a light over me, and it was freezing cold. And then in the morning when you wake up, or when I woke up, they woke me up like real early. I didn't have but a couple of hours of sleep. And then they took me outside and put me in a circle made of rocks with the T.T.I. And I don't remember who the staff was who put me on impact, like did my initial thing. But I also believe they tried to drug test me. I'm not sure if they did. Like urine. Like, I just don't know if I went for it or not. I really can't remember. But they gave me a binder that was like pretty small, and it was just like a stack of papers with rules on them, and I still have some of them. And they were like, you're on impact. This is your impact circle. Welcome to Turnabout Ranch. Like, you're going to be here. You're not going to, like, have a fun time. And they said that I would be there in the circle for 3 days. And then they told me the rules of the circle were written in the book, and that under no circumstances I allowed to make eye contact with anyone or talk to anyone or, like, move, basically. So the rules written were like, you get a fire pit in your circle, which you could make a fire there if you wanted to, if you knew how. And then they would give you like a bag of Cheerios mixed with raisins, and that was what you got to eat. And the rules that were written down said, like, no slouching, no spitting, no carving anything into the rocks with like a piece of wood, no drawing, no singing, no talking to anyone, no changing clothes, like, follow the rules of impact. And that was what it said, but really the rules of impact were that you just sat there kind of like with your back straight, but in crisscross applesauce, back straight but slanted, and you just sat there like that for the whole 3 days. And then you got to write, I guess, and they had a limit of how much you could do, because I was the type of person who was like, there's an assignment, I'm going to bang the whole thing out right now. But they wouldn't let you because they wanted you to, like, take your time and stay. So if you finished everything before your 3 days was over, you couldn't get off impact anyways. So they made you write out these things that were like essays about yourself. I guess it was like, why are you a bad kid? And like, what do you think you need to fix? Because their whole point was that they wanted you to reflect on what you were doing, and it's like a reflection impact circle. And yeah, I stayed in the circle for 3 days. One therapist came to talk to me and introduce themselves as my therapist. I'm pretty sure this person had zero, like, credentials to even be a babysitter, much less a therapist. But they say that your therapist, and they told my mom this too, was supposed to be there whenever you needed them. But I rarely saw my therapist at all, but I only saw them once for like 10 minutes on my first, like, in level 1.
Okay.
And they didn't say anything helpful.
Okay, so just to get the visual correct, this is like like 3 teepees around a fire pit. Is that correct?
I might actually, hold on, I have my iPad, and if it works, I could pull up a picture of it for you because I have one. But it's like a giant sand lot outside of this little log cabin, and like if you're sitting and I'm looking ahead of me outside of the log cabin, you see this sand circle thing, and there's mountain scenery behind the river and a creek nearby. But it's basically like everyone has their own circle, you know?
Do you have
So
to sit inside the circle, or do you guys just have to sit around the fire pit?
the fire pit is inside the circle, but yes, you have to sit inside the circle. It's really strange. I'm trying to pull up that picture of it for you. But yeah, it was a circle made of rocks that you sat inside, and like the half teepee would be showing its back to you.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. I think I have this picture in my iPad right here. It will make a lot more sense. Oh no, it won't. Never mind.
Okay. No worries.
It didn't pull up.
Okay. How long after you got there did it take for you to realize, holy shit, where the fuck am I?
This very first second that I was there. Like I knew they could be bad, but like based on my sister's experience of it, like she said it was bad and everything, but the one that I went to just felt like really, really extra scary. Like I was like, oh, this is not like what, like I at that point would have rather been hiking through the woods immediately upon arrival rather than like sitting there, because it like makes you psychotic. Like I've heard therapists write about it online and say that the impact circle is similar to what the military used to use to put you into psychosis and completely break you of like yourself. And so not being able to talk to anybody. If we needed to go to the bathroom, we could raise up like a finger and they would walk us to this little porta potty with the door that was not, there's no door, and they just stand there and watch you. And it was just like really, really weird. The whole time I just like the impact circle, and the first second I got to this place and looked around and saw that there was nowhere to run, like I knew I was fucked.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty much instantly. Um, were you there by chance with Daniel Bergoli?
I wasn't, but I do know about her story. I have been trying to round up survivors of Turnabout for like a long time now. Just to, because it's a really small place. Like I feel like not as many people went there, so it's harder to find them. No, I went in 2010. I think she went in like maybe like 2016 or up. I'm not sure.
Okay. I was just curious. And how many levels was there?
There was only 4 levels.
Okay. Were there any seminars, like the self-improvement seminars that you had to go through?
They never called anything a seminar. It was like group sessions or like activities is what they would call them. But they were like really, they weren't like about self-improvement even. Their whole stance on things was really to take away everything that you had.
Yeah, break you
It was
down.
a necessity, and then just give you no sort of communication with anybody, including the staff. And then that was like their way of breaking you down enough. And then when they built you back up, wasn't even by like giving you those self-improvement like sessions. It was just by like slowly giving you back things that normal people need, like showers or clean clothes or food or sleep or a pillow or a mattress or anything like that. So then when you got into other levels, because in level 1 and level 2, you were just like absolutely forbidden from speaking. So level 3, like you could speak to people, but with staff listening, and there was extreme rules about what you're allowed to talk about, and even like the words you're allowed to say. Like you can't say I'm sorry, and you can't say why or when or where and things like that, or like know what the time was. So things like that were prohibited from talking about, but you could talk on level 3. I kind of lost where I was going with that. Sorry.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the groups. So on level 3, like if you were to talk to someone like for the longest time, it would be in these weird little group sessions. Everything was a circle there, so you would sit in a circle like of chairs in your level 3 area with a staff member, and it was usually like the main guy, who I don't know what his position was, but he pretty much controlled the whole situation at the ranch. And he would just like go pick on someone, and then you would yell at each other about how like worthless that other kid was, and then they would like try to make you say things about yourself that may be true to some of them, like I'm a drug addict, or like I'm a liar, I'm a manipulator, like I'm a victim, or like I ruined my family, or things like that. And that's pretty much what the group was about. And then they would like just let the guy talk about you a little bit more and yell at you, and then things were over. And then if you cried or anything like that, you'd probably get in trouble. So that was the only like seminar-ish thing we would do.
Okay, so they were more like the small group feedback circle things.
Yeah, it was very, very small.
Okay. And what level did you get to before you left?
I did get to level 4. I made through all the levels, but I got in trouble a lot, so I got sent back to Impact level 1 a lot. And kind of their thing, once you get sent back to Impact, it's called, well, there's like several forms of punishment in like a order, but that's kind of the worst one. I would say it's probably, there was a desert walk, which I never had to go on, but people did go on them when I was there. That would be the worst, but Impact was definitely the second worst, and I got sent back to Impact, I think 2 or 3 times. And when you get sent back to Impact, rather than just being like going to the program for the first time, they don't tell you how long you're going to be there, and they don't tell you why you're going. You just like get told to get in the car and like get your boots on, and then they go to you get your shoes taken away at Impact. So like once you get back to the circle, they take your shoes and they just leave you there, and they don't tell you why, when, whatever.
Okay. And how long did it take you to get level 4?
So at Turnabout, you're supposed to stay there for 100 days minimum. That's like their time period, but people stayed well over 100 days, because every time you got in trouble, it added a day. So I think I was there around, I think it was either 114 days or 124 days. I don't remember which one. Because we didn't have a calendar. But I got to level 4. Level 3 is where you spend the most time. Level 4 you really shouldn't get until you're like supposedly getting close to going home. And then level 4 was like elite. Like you were like living the life in level 4, which is not a fun one, but it was still like the best thing. Like you wanted it so bad. And like people were mostly put on level 4 like in chronological order of when they got there, and as long as they weren't fucking up a bunch. And I was supposed to be on level 4 as the first one in my group at level 3, and the girl that got there like 3 weeks after me got put on level 4. I'll never forget that, because she snitched on someone, and that like made them happy, so they leveled her up before me. And she was just kind of like really snarky about it, because she knew that I'd worked really hard to try to get to level 4, and I didn't before her. But yeah, I went to level 4, and then I got sent back to Roundy and had to go through the levels again. That was the only time I got sent back to Roundy on level 4. But yeah, I made it. I went back to 1, and then I had to make it back to 4 again.
Okay. How did it make you feel when you dropped back to level 1?
That was one of the worst fucking experiences I had there. Besides like the daily torture, it was so bad, and the circumstance of why I got sent back was so shady and disgusting, because really all I did was tell the truth, and I got leveled down for no reason and punished like really badly. So midterm is when your parents come. It's the only time your parents come at Turnabout. And they obviously no calendars, and they don't tell you when anything's happening. You just have a daily routine, and if anything differs from that, they're just shouting your name and you're just going wherever they tell you to go. So I do remember that right when I got level 4, I was told, like, get in the car, you're coming with me. And I knew, I was like, oh my God, my mom's here, which I fucking hated my mom at the time. Crucial information, because I mean, for so many reasons, but now I really couldn't trust her because of what she sent me to, and she wouldn't take me home. And so then they don't tell you your parents are there, but I knew. So you get out of the car and you go into this room, and then your parents are all just standing there like in a circle. And I remember seeing my mom for the first time, and I've never felt like this about her, but I just burst into tears sobbing because, like, my feeling was like, oh my God, like, human being is a way out. Like, this person could take me out of here, you know? And so that's why I was so happy to see her and just, like, contact anyone that wasn't the staff at Turnabout Ranch. And so on my midterm, you go away with your parents for, like, you're allowed to leave the campus is pretty much what it is. And so I think we went on a hike, and then we went to eat somewhere, which was awesome. And there's really strict rules on what you're allowed to do on midterm. Like, you cannot talk about pretty much anything. You're not allowed to talk about what happened to you before you went there or after you leave, or anything besides the day's tasks that you have at Turnabout Ranch. You're not allowed to talk about the other students, and you're not allowed to talk about you being in trouble, and you're not allowed to talk about, like, negative things if it's your feelings about your parents. Like, so there was pretty much nothing to talk about. And 2 things happened. I kept it cool because I was just so stoked to be out, and I kind of was just, like, playing with the waters and seeing where things were with my mom. And I realized very quickly that she was, like, fully in the program and that I wasn't going home. So I just was like, whatever, I'm getting close to the end. Like, I'm just going to have a good time with my mom, try to, in the outside world. And then we went to a gas station in this very small town, and it was the weirdest thing, but I saw at this little table an iPod, and I knew it was my sister's iPod because she had, like, her name carved in it. And I was like, Mom, is Catherine here? And she was like, no, don't even ask that. And I was like, what? And then the bathroom door opened to the gas station, and my sister came out. And I was like, what? Like, mind blown. I was hugging her. I was sobbing. I was, like, whispering in her ear, like, get me the fuck out of here, you know, because she knew. And apparently she came, and everyone else's siblings got to sometimes come if they were available to, but mine was not, and they turned her away. And they told her she wasn't allowed to come see me. So they told my mom, like, just keep her somewhere away from Taylor. Don't tell her she's here. Hide all of her stuff in the hotel room so she doesn't see it if you go back there. But I don't know how, by just coincidence, I saw my sister. And we, like, secretly spent time together under my mom's supervision for the rest of the day. And then at night, my sister went somewhere, I don't know, on a hike maybe. And my mom was like, all right, well, we're going to go back to my room and I'll take a shower and then I'm going to take you home for the night, or back. She said back for the night. And that's when I, like, lost my mind and was like, oh my God, I have to go back there. Like, there's no way I'm going back there. So when she got out of the shower, I told her everything that was happening. And she was, like, beside herself. She was like, what do you mean this is all happening? Like, there's no way you're making this up. And I was like, I'm not making it up. I promise. Like, even if you try to ask the other kids, they won't tell you because they're too scared of getting in trouble. Like, but please, I'll do anything. Don't take me back. And she goes, well, I'm going to talk to your therapist, Maria, about this. And I was like, please don't talk to my therapist. I was, like, begging her. I was like, okay, I promise I'll just go back. But, like, don't talk to Maria about it. I'll get in huge trouble. And Maria's in on it too. So, like, Maria is one of the abusers. So, like, please don't do that. She was, like, promising me that she wasn't going to talk to Maria. She was like, fine, as long as you don't do this shit ever again. like, don't bring it up. And so I told her I wouldn't. She dropped me back off. I was like really upset. And then the next morning I was just doing my chores, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for my mom to come get me for my second day of midterm, and she never showed up. And like, I mean, I was doing my chores, but I was kind of just being like, oh, like, when is she going to come get me? Everyone else's parents came and got them for their midterm second day. And I was just sitting there doing dishes. And then I started to make the lunch for everybody. And then that's when the director came in and was like, Taylor, like, get your boots on and grab a jacket. You're going to Roundy. And I thought he meant maybe for like a tour for a parent, because he was with parents that were touring the facility when he did this. And so I kind of laughed and was like, oh, like, haha, funny joke, you know? He was like, no, I'm so serious. Like, you don't want to get a jacket? That's fine. Get in the car. And just shoved me in the van and took me back to Roundy and then put me on level 1. Didn't tell me why, just left me there. It was snowing outside. He didn't let me grab a jacket because I didn't understand that it was for real. And then I spent, I think, 2 weeks at Roundy camp in the circle. But when you go back, like I said, it's kind of different. So you don't have like goals or anything to fill out on paper. You just sit there and what they call reflection. So that was like how I found out hardcore that like you can't fuck with these people. Like, they will find out no matter what, and they will end you. And that I just had to play their stupid game. I had to, because they came back finally. Like, the whole clinical staff came back about 2 weeks later, and they like all stood over me in my circle and were like, are you really cold? And I was like, yeah, because like I said, it was snowing in southern Utah, and this was like January. No, this was December. And then they said, are you hungry? And I said, yes. And they're like, do you want to come inside? And I was like, yes. And so then they were like, okay, well, you can do that. You can get in that warm car right now and come back to the barn, which was level 3. And they were like, but if you get up, you have to make an agreement and sign this contract saying that you're going to go into the office, which we were never allowed in. And you're going to pick up the phone, which we were not allowed to use the phone for any reason. And you're going to call your mom and tell her that everything you said on midterm was a lie and that you're a manipulating liar, and that's what you do and you need to stay here. And I did it because I wanted out of the circle. And it was like one of the most traumatizing 10-minute phone calls of my life.
Okay. Did they load you up with prescription medications or take you off prescription medications when you got there?
No, I wasn't on anything, and they didn't try to put me on anything. I think that I don't really know much about the meds because I just didn't get any, but I never heard of them giving kids meds. I feel like it would be very much in their like ethical code to take kids off meds for the reason of thinking that like God didn't intend them to have medication.
Okay. Did you guys ever get to work kitchen, and how was the food? Was the food horrible? Was it decent?
So yeah, when you're on level 3 and 4, you get work jobs every day, and level 2, you get just like heavy duty slave labor type stuff. But on level 3, I got kitchen a lot. It was like a rotating schedule of chores. So like some days you would be in like the animal care, which is just like shoveling poop and like feeding animals and like giving them shots and taking care of them basically. And then I got kitchen a lot because I was like, it was nice almost. Like kitchen was kind of the best one, you know? Because with kitchen, like there wasn't ever like the kitchen lady, I think her name was Debbie. She might have also been the horse lady. I'm not sure. But she was like kind of like, she didn't really watch us as hard as the other staff did. So when you were in kitchen, I always got to work somehow with my best friend there. That like was weird to say because you're not allowed to talk to anyone. So we like eye contact were best friends.
Yeah.
But we would get to talk in the kitchen, and like we did we made the meals, and then we also did dishes. And so the meals were weird. Level 2, you don't get any condiments. My dog's barking again. I may have to feed him if that's what he wants. I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know. But yeah, level 2, you don't get condiments, and you get like really basic stuff like cream of wheat and like the raisin mix, and then like canned fruit, and like sometimes a peanut butter sandwich. I don't think they even gave jelly on level 1 because that's like considered a condiment, or like ramen but without the flavoring packets, which is really weird. But then in level 3, like I remember having like on a really good day, we made shepherd's pie, which is like really fattening, but it's like the potatoes and the ground beef and the corn or something like that with cheese on top. And it was like making food for that TV show, like 17 Kids and Counting or something. Like it was like making like bulk mass amounts of food for this, like, I guess it was like 12 or 15 kids when I was there. And so, yeah, I remember having fun doing that and the food being good when I made it. But what was weird, hold on, I'm just going to feed my dogs while I'm on the phone. It's not too loud. But what was weird is that they made you, no matter what level you were on, you had to drink a cup of milk, like a tall glass of milk, before you were allowed to eat your food or have any water. Which is disgusting, yeah. And also, I didn't even remember this until I was speaking with another Turnabout survivor the other day, and she was talking about that. But she was like, yeah, I was a vegan before I went there, and I was like, I forgot that I was a vegetarian and a vegan for most of my life. Like, I would say 90% until I was 17, so 90% of my life until then. And I remember it just destroying my stomach, like, really badly. The milk, and it was just also gross to me. And so the food that they fed you was good at level 3-ish. And then when it was bad, it was really bad. It was like, if you were on impact inside of the barn, because there's like, I don't know, it's so different level wise than any program I've heard about. But if you were on a punishment inside of level 3, your food was a peanut butter sandwich with just like peanut butter and 2 pieces of bread for the daytime, and then at night you had to eat a plastic bowl with cold water poured over a brick of the ramen without the flavor packet. So you're essentially just eating a raw brick of ramen and crunching it between your teeth and then drinking the water out of the bowl, because the rule was that you had to eat everything on your plate no matter what it was, like all the time. Okay. So impact food and punishment food were the absolute worst, but level 3 food was and level 2 was trash, and level 1 was essentially nothing.
Okay. Did they have any intervention, solitary confinement, or study hall there?
Not really. Definitely not study hall, because we didn't really like have studies.
Well, so study hall would be like a consequence thing where you'd have to, like, so there would be solitary confinement or intervention, and then there would be study hall and or worksheets. And worksheets was essentially, if you broke a rule, you'd have to go in there and write sentences.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that would just be impact for them.
Okay.
Because yeah, you weren't allowed to have anything with anyone. And then so like the 3 levels, just to make it more clear, because I feel like I'm bouncing around with it. It's just like weird to recall in my brain this way, like thinking about, I've never described it to someone who like knows about programs, you know?
Yeah.
So that's cool. But so the first level of punishment when you're on 3 or 4 is called focus, and focus was like blah, like it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like you got days added to your stay, and like it was bad. You shouldn't be on it. So you during focus, you did all the regular chores like the regular kids throughout the day, but then at a certain point when everyone had their like reading time or whatever they were allowed to do that wasn't just constantly work, you had to sit in they had these desks facing the four corners of the building, and you just sat in one of those little school chair desks with the tray in front of you, like upright, you know, no slouching, and you just sat and stared against the wall. And then if you were on a specific focus, like for a specific reason, like you're too good of friends with someone, that will put you on punishment. And so you're not allowed to talk to anyone, but you're especially not allowed to talk to that person, and like no eye contact or anything. And then you're on focus. Then you have to like write essays about like why you shouldn't be friends with that person, or why you manipulated them into friendship, or why you exclude everyone else or something like that. So like for different reasons, if you got put on punishment for one of their like actual code violations, then you would maybe do some work about that, or like an anger sheet or something.
Okay.
And then so that was focus. And then there was reflection, which was like pretty bad. And that was during the day, you would walk laps around their horse arena, just like for like 8 or more hours. And then at lunch, you would get a cup of water and an apple. And then when everyone was eating, you had to come inside and watch them eat. And then you sat at the desks again, facing the wall. And that's when you would get like the cold brick of ramen for your dinner. And then you would go to bed way later than everyone else. And you would stay downstairs and not go up to your loft. And you would sleep in the same clothes. Like you couldn't change clothes on reflection. And you just slept with like a light on your face, just on the ground next to the night staff. And then sometimes the next day you would get sent to like a baby circle, which was like a circle like the one at Roundy Camp, but at the barn. And it was just like in their backyard. And you would just like sit in the circle or sit on a rock or something like that. And then the second highest level was when you get sent back to Roundy, and the fourth highest level was called a desert walk. And that's when the male staff, Myron, would take you in his truck to the middle of the desert in the very beginning of the morning, and you had to carry 2 gallons of water on your back, and you just walked behind his truck as it dragged you through the desert all day. And then you would sleep on the ground sometimes, or sometimes come back and do it over and over and over again. No,
Okay.
I never went on one of those though, but I heard about them.
Okay. Did you get to rent library books when you were there?
Oh,
No? Okay.
no. They had like a few books that were supposed to be part of our schooling, but it wasn't schooling books. Like there's a book that I think was called Raising Ophelia, or something Ophelia. And it was like this book about bad girls in the 80s or late 70s or something like that. And it was just a bunch of short stories about bad kids. And that's the only thing I remember reading at all when I was there. And I remember taking my time reading it so that I could read a book.
Yeah.
Not be bored.
Did you guys get candy bars when you got to a certain level?
No.
Okay. How was school? Did you do school there?
Yeah, there was supposed to be a school there. It was like a little schoolhouse outside of the main facility for level 3s and 4s. You could only do it like when you were level 3, but it didn't really start immediately. I really don't remember much about the school because I don't think we went there a lot. Like I feel like if at most it was probably once a week for an hour or two, and we just sat in this little schoolhouse, and there was a teacher, and in retrospect she was probably cool, but we just needed something to laugh about. And I remember me and my friends would call her Brother Phoenix East Horse because she gave like witch vibes, and she would like rip sage off trees and be like, "Do you smell it, girls?" And we'd be like, "What the fuck?" And aren't you supposed to be teaching us math or something? And so yeah, I remember being in that little schoolroom, and I guess I did schoolwork because they said that I finished the 11th grade. And then come to find out afterwards that there was zero accreditation behind that, and it was all about God or something. And that no public school ever, especially private, would take those. So I never did any school while I was gone. I didn't finish the 11th grade when I was gone.
Okay. What was the stupidest thing you got a consequence for?
Oh, wow. Let's think. I was just rereading my letters home from me to my mom the other day, and while there was hella stupid stuff that got me in trouble, I have to say that this letter was kind of funny because I was like mad in the letter. Apparently, my mom put a note on my account that said that I had to wear sunscreen. Had to, but you weren't allowed to wear sunscreen. So instead of making it like oh, you're being protected from the sun thing every day, they like forced me down and lathered me in sunscreen every morning. And one morning I just didn't. I was like supposed to start doing it myself after a few weeks, and I didn't do it, I guess. And so in my letter home, I said, "Thanks a lot, Mom. I had to walk in circles all day today because I didn't put on sunscreen." So I think that would probably be the stupidest one.
Okay. Was there any grooming from the staff or any sexual, like inappropriate advances from the staff or student to student that you witnessed or that you experienced?
I know firsthand that, or not firsthand, secondhand, that there was sexual advances and predatory behavior and actual assaults on some of the female students at Turnabout. Like one or two when I was there, and then I've heard a lot about it just from other survivors and the lawsuits that have been made against those staff members. And then the only thing that would come close to it for me personally was the night staff guy who wanted, and I know it was like probably supposed to be a strip search, but I was very weirded out by it, and it felt really aggressive. Like, and maybe strip searches are always aggressive, but this was a male staff member in the middle of the night with no one watching in a room alone with me trying to get me to take my clothes off, and that's when I hit him in the face because it felt really weird. So yeah, other than that, I just know about it
Okay. Any inappropriate restraints?
all the time. There was they joked about it. They thought it was funny. It was supposed to be called PCS, which really stood for wherever the hell they got it from, positive control strategies, which I don't really understand how that translates to tackling a child, wrapping their arm around their neck until they started to turn blue, with like people and their hands over their back and their head and their neck, face down on the ground. That's how they restrain people. And sometimes they would beat them while they were down on the ground. But specifically, like, I was restrained 2 times. Surprisingly, not the time I hit the night staffer in the face. But one time was when I was told I wasn't going home. I punched a hole through, and it's weird because I was never a violent person before I went there, ever. Like, I was like the hippy dippy kid who like smoked weed and like listened to fucking like Death Cab for Cutie and Sublime. You know, I like wasn't, and I was like an animal collective freak. Like, I didn't believe in guns, like none of that. But I felt so helpless that I like wanted to like hit people and like break shit. So my therapist told me I wasn't going home. So I punched a hole in her trailer door, which was not hard to punch a hole in. It was pretty thin. I don't have like super strength or anything. And they restrained me then. And it was like she called in Myron, the head of the barn, to restrain me for that one. And then the other one, I don't remember why I was restrained. That's something my brain deleted on purpose, I think. But there was a little girl there that was only 13. And I think about her whenever I think about my time there because it was so fucked up what they did to her. But she was there. She told me when I was a level 4, I'd talk to her. And she told me that the reason she was there is because she had dyslexia, and they claim to treat that on their website. And so she told me she didn't really understand, because we'd obviously been there for well over 90 days at this point, and she didn't understand why she was there if she has dyslexia. And this was, meanwhile, while she was outside doing what they made her do every night, which is soak her feet in a container full of bleach Clorox, because they told her that she had athlete's foot, and that was the only way to cure it. And that but it went on for months, so I don't know what that was about. But I knew she was alone sitting outside, and because I was 4, I could talk to her. So I went out there, and I snuck out there and talked to her about it, and she was like crying when I asked her about her parents, because she told me she loved them so much. This little girl was so sweet. And so at lunch, dinner, and breakfast, I don't know what was up with her. I really don't. I couldn't tell you. But she would throw up everything she ate. But because you're supposed to eat everything on your plate, that was not allowed. So they would restrain her over her plate of food, and she happened to sit across from me and like diagonal to my friend. And every meal, we're expected to eat our meals, everything on our plate, while like currently, like actively not look, and just, you weren't allowed to look at restraints, and like just keep eating while the staff shoved her face, held her down, and forced her to eat her own vomit. And that happened so much that it was just normal to us. And I don't know why she vomited. I really couldn't tell you. But clearly, maybe the diet wasn't like what she needed, or maybe she was just so stressed out, or whatever it was. Or maybe just doing it once, it was so triggering that she just vomited when she ate there. But yeah, they restrained her a lot. Like a lot. And she was like small and 13, and I teach children now, and I'm like, if that, like 13 is just so little.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have a graduation ceremony at Turnabout?
I did, yeah. I have a graduation video that I found yesterday, actually, that my mom somehow snuck a camera in there and videoed, and it was really, really hard to watch. It's like basically you sit in a circle in the chairs, and they tell you, or they ask you, like, all the staff to say something about you. And so the video that I watched, I can kind of give a summary of what I saw, because I'm sure it went on longer than that. But the staff all sat, and they said things about me, like, to make my mom feel better, because she's in the room, she's sitting there videoing it. And they're like, Taylor was so helpful with A, B, and C. One of the things they mentioned is that, and I feel horrible about this, is that I was really helpful apparently to a dad who didn't want to leave his kid there, was dropping her off. And they made me do a tour to reassure the dad that everything was going to be okay. Then they made me do the girls' intake. And I don't even remember that until I saw the video yesterday and remembered that I did that. But I know I did it because they told me that if I didn't, something bad would happen. But yeah, they said that the dad was so comfortable with me and what I said to him about the program that he was going to take her home and didn't, because of me. And then they asked all the other kids something that was really weird, because you're not allowed to talk about anything. They said, talk about your midterm. And they asked the kids if they knew why I got sent home on midterm. And the kids were all like, we don't really know, because they fucking knew, but they didn't want to get in trouble. So they just said they didn't know. And then the staff asked me to tell them why. And I started crying, and I said, don't beg your parents to come home on midterm. And then my mom spoke up and was like, and don't lie to your mom and tell her that Myron is the most sadistic devil that wants to torture me and is picking on me and just hates me. And my face was so uncomfortable in the video, and the staff that she was videoing were extremely uncomfortable, and the whole room went quiet when she said that, because that guy was horrible, and he was a sadistic demon, in my opinion. Yeah. But yeah, then after that, all of the little girls give you a present, and it's just some stupid shit that here's a piece of horsehair to remind you of how we tried to cattle horses together or whatever, and then here's like an apron to remind you. That one was cute and special to me, and I cried in the video because it was the friend that I was scared of leaving her there that gave that to me, that worked in the kitchen with me, and she gave me like a plastic apron to remind me of working in the kitchen together. And then I don't remember what the other kids gave me. It was kind of foggy in the video and in real life. And then they give you this academic certificate that's fucking bonkers and doesn't mean anything. And then they give you this like t-shirt that says Turnabout Ranch member for life. And I'm pretty sure I burned that. And then they give you a certificate saying you graduated from Turnabout Ranch. And when she gave it to me, I cried. And then the guy was like, "You're free to go." Where he was like, "There's nothing else, you're free to go." And then the video is about to end and you can hear me be like crying, being like, "I've waited to hear you say that for so long." And then the video ends.
Okay. Did you ever have to police the lower levels when you got to a higher level?
Yeah, when you were a 4, like your goal was to snitch on everyone, to and even as a 3, like you were encouraged to snitch on other 3s and 2s if you saw them by chance so that you could level up. And then at 4 you were just encouraged to snitch because if you did, you were just favored, like you were just like the one that they liked and stuff. And basically you would just, I remember this level 4 snitched on me for talking when I was on a no contact with one of my friends. And she saw me like talking to her, but we were on a work job together and we had to talk to each other. And she walked by and saw us talking to each other and she snitched on us and we got in trouble. So that was like, snitching was like kind of their like policing, you know? And then the level 4s would do intakes of new kids too.
Okay. What was the hardest part about being at Turnabout Ranch for you, and how did you deal with it?
Everything was pretty hard. Reviewing my letters made me think differently about how I feel now, because it seems like what I was writing to my mom was that it was really hard for me to just not hear from anyone, because I wrote her every day and she never wrote me back. And I remember I wrote a bunch that why aren't you writing me back? Like, why aren't you writing me back? This is really hard for me to just do nothing. Like, working my ass off was really hard because it wasn't like normal work for even an adult. It was like overtime, like chopping wood, skinning logs, like heavy duty shit for little kids with no breaks in between. And then just following all of these rules was so hard because they were unspoken, some of them. And then there was other rules that were just so many, it was hard to remember them. Like, it was like they had whiteboards full of rules all the way around the room saying what you couldn't say, all things that you couldn't say. And I think just the main hardest thing was just not being with my friends, because I didn't really care about my mom at that point in my life. Like, she had done me so dirty. So not being able to tell them that I was there, that I was like semi-okay, was hard. But I just kind of played their game to get through it. Like, when I realized that I couldn't just rebel and be the kid that didn't do what they said, it wouldn't work for me. I was going to stay there forever. I realized that I had to just like pretend that I was working the program, even though I wasn't. Like, I fully was cognitive of the fact that I was being abused. I never once thought like, this is normal. Like, I knew it was wrong the whole time, and I wrote down everything that ever happened to me every day in my little journal that they gave me, because I knew that when I got out, like, I could use it against them. So that's kind of how I dealt with it. And then sometimes I would walk in circles in the arena when I was in trouble, and I'd walk really fast, because if you walk really fast and then you stop, you get like this weird tunnel vision, and it's like you're tripping all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. You like disassociate completely, and then you like go somewhere else for 5 minutes. So I would do that a lot when I was in trouble. I would walk really fast and then stop and disassociate and then do it again and again and again, because it was fun to just like not be there.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on about Turnabout Ranch before we move on to the second program?
No, just like fuck them. If I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was definitely hardcore, and I'm like, the circle was just horrible, and the manipulation and the tactics they played us against our parents was horrible, and it was forever traumatizing. Yeah.
Okay. Well then, can you walk us through what happened? What led up to you being transported to the other program? How did that transport happen? Let's start there.
Yeah, so when you're supposed to go home at turnabout, they have a little meeting with you and your counselor person, and it's a going home plan, is what they called it. So I went in for that, and like I said, she pretty much just said straight out, so I know we're supposed to talk about your going home plan, but you're not going home. And that's when I hit the wall, physically, like literally. And then I guess maybe she could have explained it to me if I didn't punch the wall. I don't know what she was gonna say. But the only thing she told me before I hit the wall was that what it was called and where it was located, and that was a year-long minimum. And it was an indoor, like, all-girls facility. And that was like, the worst news at the time. So I was so stoked to go home, and I was like, I played their stupid game. Like, why don't I get to go home like everyone else? So my mom picked me up from graduation. She flew me, and I went willingly. Like, not willingly, like I didn't want to go. I went compliantly. Um, and I guess we flew or we drove there. I really can't remember it all, but I do remember staying in a hotel the night before with her, and she went to sleep. iPhones had just come out. I went on the internet. I like stole her phone while she was sleeping. I went on the internet and I texted my friends, and I told them like where I was and that I loved them and stuff like that. And then I deleted all the texts and was like, don't text it back. Like, this is my mom's phone or whatever. I'm gonna go to this other place. This is where it is. Please come get me. um, and then the next day we went, and so I didn't have an escort, and she brought me. It was in Hallsville, Texas, another like small town outside of Shreveport, Louisiana. And it was like a big, it could look like a ranch from the street, but it was more like a property full of like little houses and stuff. And then it was really close to the road, main road, like a highway or something. And that one was a level program too. So they told me, like, you're going to start at the bottom, obviously. And I went into this office with the guy who was my counselor there, and I was excited kind of because I thought maybe this one isn't going to be as bad as the other one. Like, it looks like it's inside, and like, I don't know, this counselor seemed like really like, like cool, youth ministry leader vibes. And so I was like, maybe this guy will actually help me. Like, maybe I can tell him what happened to me at Turnabout, and like, he'll tell my mom, and like, she'll come get me, or like, maybe he can actually help me figure out what happened to me at Turnabout. I didn't think that they were all in on the same fucking game. So yeah, I talked to him for a few minutes, and he told me the basic rundown. And I was like, I get to say goodbye to my mom first, right? And he was like, yeah, for sure. And then I got outside, and she was gone. And then I asked him why, and that's when I knew that this place was fucked up too, because right after being so bubbly, he was like, your mom doesn't love you, and that's why she left you, and she didn't want to say goodbye to you. She said she didn't want to hug you. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, you lied to me. Either my mom or him or both, So that's kind of how I got my intake there. Was just to a counselor's office, and then they put me in the main room with the other girls.
Okay. I forgot to glance over this. Was there boys at Turnabout Ranch, or was it just girls?
Boys and girls. And it was like, I think it was like 12 to 17-year-olds. I could be wrong on the 12 thing. It might have been 13, but there was like not many kids there at all. There was probably 10 boys and 10 girls at a time every 4 months ish. And the little kids stayed on their own campus, but the campus that they were staying on when I was there was being renovated. And the kids were doing the renovation. So they were actually staying with us at the barn. And so still, even, I think there was maybe like 12 total girls and like maybe 11 boys or something like that.
Okay. And What was this place called? The second place?
It's called Heartlight Ministries.
Okay. And was it one of those religious based programs?
Yeah, it was almost more religious than Turnabout, which is strange because that's run by LDS members. And I think Heartlight could have been an LDS based place, but they were teaching more like Presbyterian or like, I don't even know, like a general Christian agenda. So yeah, it was definitely like prayers and things like that and God based.
Okay. Was it points and levels? If so, how many levels?
Don't know how many levels. I don't think there was points, but my memory on Heartlight is probably the foggiest of any of them. I know for a fact that like there was levels because you wore a certain color based on where you were in the program. So I was in the beginning level, and you were there for like a lot longer than you were in the first level at Turnabout because it was such a longer program. So you wore gray in the first level. That's the only level I made it to. And you were there for quite a bit of time, and it was like a little house. It was like a legitimate house with lots of bedrooms, and then those bedrooms just had bunk beds with sleeping like bags on top of mattresses on them, which to me, I was like, this is like, to no offense in anyone that went to any of these RTCs because they were fucked up and horrible. I just didn't spend enough time at this one to get the full treatment. But like coming from Turnabout, I was like, oh my God, like this looks like a 5-star hotel right now. Like there's beds here and like I get to sleep inside all of the time and like I get to talk to people. It's crazy. But yeah, it was just like a house full of like 4 bedrooms with probably 2 to 3 bunk beds in them each. And I could not say how many girls were there, but probably 12 in my house with 2 counselors. And we all just stayed inside the house and did things.
Okay. And essentially you would just go to church and Bible study, stuff like that?
Yeah, and they did have like a schooling program there, but since Turnabout wasn't accredited, there was like this confusion in my records, so I just sat in the schoolroom and I got to read books that they had there already, because I didn't have any schoolwork to do because I don't know what happened, but they kept telling me I'd ask every day and they said like, your school isn't transferring it somehow. So, but I do know that there were other like elite levels where like maybe eventually 2 years down the road you could live in your own little cabin on campus without supervision with another upper level. But I don't know how many levels they were. It feels like a lot. It feels like there could have been like at least 10.
Interesting. Okay. And how long were you there?
I was not there very long. My story gets kind of weird here. I was there. I know I was there from sometime in the beginning of March or at least February because I was there for several weeks. I got in trouble a lot there too, and they were all for like really really ridiculous things, like funny things. Because we were so bored. I feel like when I remember my time at Heartlight, it was like we were a bunch of cats that were at like an animal shelter, like locked in cages, and like we couldn't. It was the opposite of Turnabout. Like we couldn't go outside. And if you were outside, you were on a punishment wearing an orange jumpsuit with all of your clothes and items taken away from you and no shoes, and you were working. And we were also not allowed to listen to music. So I felt like we were all just going crazy, just like coming up with ways to have fun. And we weren't watched as heavily. Like we didn't have doors on our bedrooms or anything like that. But we weren't like heavily watched. So I remember I dared my friend to pee her pants in the jumpsuit that she was wearing. Like it was a dare we were all doing. But she did it. And I was like, I promise you I'll go get another jumpsuit from the laundry. Like, because she was on restriction or reflection or something, like whatever you call it there. So she was in the orange jumpsuit. And I was like, I promise I'll go get you another one if you do this. Like, this is real. That would be fucking hilarious. No one else has done it. And she did it. She fully did it. And there's pee all over the kitchen floor. And Then I went to get her a jumpsuit and there weren't any clean ones. And I was like,
Mhm.
what do I do? So I was like trying to dry her off with paper towels. And then the staff came in and we got all in trouble for that. And then one time we started singing Get Low by Lil Jon in the kitchen, just like bursted out singing it at full volume, got in trouble for that. But it wasn't as like strict. It was more of like a mental fuck there. But yeah, the friend that I was made there, I still have that friend. They're the coolest person ever. We have a bond that will never be broken because of what happened to us. And she would run away a lot. Like a lot. Like almost every single week that I was there, she tried to run away. And sorry, she like went to a Greyhound one time, and she told me when she was at the Greyhound, she saw a ticket to Atlanta, and she thought of me. And that thought, I wasn't ever going to run away. I wasn't. I was just going to wait till I turned 18 and walk, because I was pretty close to 18. And they did tell you, you know, you get your shoes taken away and all of your clothes taken away if you decide to walk. So, like, have fun walking naked in Texas, you know. So I let that thought, like, I let it in. And I started thinking about it, and it, like, planted this crazy seed in my head. And one night, it was actually, what's today? Is today the 12th?
Today is the 12th, yeah.
So it was 13 years ago tomorrow, because it was March 13th. Or 12-ish years ago, I don't know. But I decided that I was going to leave. And it was in the middle of the night when the staff were asleep. And my friend shared the bunk bed with me, the one that always ran away. And I was like, you know shit, like, you know the territory, you know what I mean, outside of here. And I haven't been able to go outside. So, like, do you want to run away right now? And she was like, oh, for sure. And I was like, okay, but here's the thing is that, like, I'm not fucking coming back. Like, I know you, like, tried really hard, but you just weren't you were being sloppy, dude. Like, we can't do what you did when you kept running away, because you would go to family and friends, and she lived in Texas, so it was accessible, and they just send her back. And so, or she'd even just get caught running.
Yeah.
So I looked at her, and we just, like, made this really, really insane decision to run.
Yeah.
And it was like a classic running situation. We filled our pillowcases with, like, all of our belongings, which was really stupid stuff. Like, we weren't allowed to have razors, so we had those, like, electric ones, buzzers, and we were like, we'll pawn them for money or something. And then I had a few pictures of, like, my cat from home and stuff like that, and I took that. And then I took, like, an extra shirt, but she was on restriction at the time, or reflection, or whatever they call it there, so she was wearing an orange jumpsuit. And so I gave her my clothes, because I was like, you can't run away in an orange jumpsuit. And then I didn't have any shoes. Like, they kept our shoes locked away from us. And I don't know how, but she was a smart badass. So she kept, like, a stash of shoes. And she had an extra pair. And so I borrowed her Toms. They're like little gray Toms. Everything had to be gray. And we came up with a plan of what to tell people, like, if they saw us wearing the gray. And then we just looked at each other, and, like, we just ran out the front door of the place in the middle of the night. And it took about 5 seconds for all the alarms to start going off everywhere around the campus. I was really shocked that the doors weren't closed. But she kind of told me, like, you know, there's this time period of about 30 minutes from when the staff go into their room to go take a shower or whatever, or get ready for bed, that the doors aren't locked. So, and then they go and lock them after they do the room checks. So that's when we did it, and the door was unlocked. And I remember we, like, rounded the corner. It had just rained or something, and I fell sliding in the ground, and I, like, was on the ground. And I think so much adrenaline filled my body that I couldn't move all of a sudden. I couldn't speak. It was like those dreams you have when you're running and nothing comes out, and, like, you're running and you can't move. And she was just, like, screaming at me to get up. And I did, and we ran across the street. There was train tracks. It was on a main road. We were screaming while the train went by, like, hell yeah, we fucking did it, you know? And then this dude just came out of the woods out of nowhere and tackled her to the ground. and I didn't really know what to do. I felt pretty conflicted because I wanted to like help her, and I knew like, oh fuck, it's over, there's probably more of them. But she kept screaming like, please leave me here, please leave me here, keep running, keep running. So I just dropped all the stuff I was carrying, and I kept running, and then I dove eventually into some thorn bushes and laid there for until I felt like I saw the sun coming up. And then I went to a gas station, and I asked the lady at the gas station who was outside in the morning when it opened if I could borrow her cell phone. And she was like, aren't you one of those Heartlight kids? You're wearing gray. And I was like, what's Heartlight? And then she was like, well, why do you need to go home? Like, you're in this little town, you know? And I told her that my boyfriend had just dumped me on a road trip, and that he took my cell phone and threw all my shit out the window, and that you could probably find it on the side of the road because my stuff was on the side of the road where I left it. And she was sketched. So she stood next to me when I made the phone call, and I called all of my friends because I remembered their phone numbers by heart. And then the last resort person, because no one answered, it was like 6 a.m. or something. Someone answered finally, and she saved my fucking life. I called her and was like, hey, it's me, Tay. And she was like, what's up? And it was like, I had to play the story. It was like, my boyfriend dumped me on the side of the road, you know? Like, I've got to get home. Is there any way you can buy me a Greyhound ticket? And she did. She ended up buying me, used a fake name. She bought me the Greyhound ticket. I gave the lady her phone back. And then at that point, the lady fully believed me. So she was like, you know, there's a staff member, or there's not a staff member, there's a dude who comes here every morning named Luke to come get like gas and, you know, cigarettes or something like that every morning relentlessly. And I trust him, and like, you're about to go through a rough part of town, and I don't want you to walk there by yourself. So I'm going to ask this guy to give you a ride. And I was really freaked out because the owner's name was the same name. So I thought that maybe she was setting me up. And so I like freaked out in the bathroom of the gas station and tried to find an exit door, and there wasn't one. And so I just remember being like, all right, well, if they're out there to get me, it's happening now, because there's no other way out of this gas station. And I walked outside, and it was just this random dude, super sweet dude, random guy. He put me in his truck. He gave me $40. He bought me breakfast. He sat outside of the Greyhound station with me, waiting for it to open, because I was kind of scared to sit there by myself. I figured they would look for me there, because there's police sirens up and down the road looking for me all night long. And then I waited.
So this is before you turned 18, right?
Yeah, I was still 17. So yeah, at the Greyhound station when it opened, I think my bus didn't leave for like 3 or 4 hours or something. So I just sat there, and I remember I was so full of fucking anxiety that I just kept having to ask the lady for the key to the bathroom, and I was just going in there and vomiting over and over and over again because I was so scared. And then I used the payphone a lot to call my friend in Atlanta who was going to pick me up, to just like talk me off the ledge, you know, every so often. And then I would just sit there and hold a magazine over my face because the police came in there at least 3 or 4 times looking for me. But they never saw me because for whatever reason, I was in the bathroom using the phone or had the magazine on my face, and I didn't use my name. So I got to board the Greyhound, and I made it home like a day later to Atlanta, and my friends picked me up, and the police never found me.
Awesome. Okay. How's been, let's talk about reintegration into society. How has life been since you got out of the program? What's been the hardest for you? What do you still struggle with? Did you ever get into hard drugs? Anything like that?
You know, it's kind of weird because the reintegration in society was really, really, really harsh at first, you know. I just was so confused because it was also such a weird way to leave. Like, I feel like most kids just get thrown back in to the real world, and they don't get to leave on their own terms. And just recently I was talking to someone who told me like that, you know, I told them kind of the overview of what happened to me in my program. And they were like, that's really dope that you got to leave on your own terms. And I was like, I've never thought of it like that. Like, I really did do that on my own terms. Everyone else just got forced. And then they didn't know how to, like, adapt to the real world. But I would say the first week was really, really hard because I was super scared that I was going to be caught. So that was my main struggle getting out, was fear of being caught. And by the police or my mom, and then them sending me back to Turnabout Ranch, because that's where I thought they would send me back to. And so that was really difficult. My friends were super rad, and so were their parents. Like, they housed me and stuff. But I had a lot of problems. Like, I was about to turn 18. I wasn't going to go with my mom anywhere. So I had to re-enroll myself, and while everyone was having like their normal senior year of high school, like I had to do 2 grades in once to finish high school on time with my friends because I didn't get any credits for the year that I was gone. And it was like no one really understood like how traumatizing it was at all, because I remember on April Fool's Day, my friends, like, they thought they were being cute and funny. It was not malicious at all. But they, like, woke me up out of bed that morning and were shaking me, and they're like, they're fucking here, like, they're gonna come get you, your mom's here, she's gonna take you. And I, like, freaked out, and I ran into this, like, scary attic closet, and, like, was freaking out, having a panic attack in the closet, like, crying. And then, like, 10 minutes later, they were all laughing and were like, come out, it's fine, like, April Fool's Day. And it was April Fool's Day, and I was just like, that's not fucking funny, like, at all, you know? It's really, really scary, actually. So I don't think they, like, fully understood how serious it was. And I don't think they did until that documentary came out the other day. But yeah, that was hard. Getting myself back in school and finishing on time without any parental support was hard because I was basically like I was left to my own devices immediately, unless I wanted to live under their like life contract that they had me sign at Turnabout, which is what my mom would have wanted me to do if I stayed with her, and I wasn't going to do that. So I took care of myself, and I pretty much never got to be like financially stable because of it. Like, I never, like, I was already in debt, you know, because also when I came back, I was a felon because I had missed like 3 or 4 court dates, and my mom neither told me about them nor gave a shit. So, like, I was just missing court dates, getting bench warrant after bench warrant that I didn't even know about because I thought that, like, they told me in the programs that, like, I was gonna be fine for my charges for the hit and run because I was going to these programs. And then come to find out, I'm like 19 years old, and the police are going around to all of my friends' houses in the middle of the night looking for me to arrest me for the bench warrants for the court case. I had to, you know, get a lawyer and spend another 1.5 years dealing with this hit and run that happened to me when I was 17. And they tried me as a 17-year-old, and they tried me as a 17-year-old that was an adult, because in the state of Georgia you can do that. So they gave me a felony for hit and run. They took my license away from me, which just, everything just kept setting me back in life, and I just felt like I couldn't get anywhere until very recently. Like, I've always been financially independent, but I've never been like okay, because I've always been living like hand to mouth since then.
Do you still have a felony?
Yeah.
Do you have a driver's license?
I do. They took my driver's license away from me twice for this specific incident because they lost the paperwork that said that my license had been suspended for the time it needed to be. So like I got it taken away again when I was 19, and then I think again when I was like 20 or 21, just because they lost the paperwork. So I had to deal with that twice. But I did all the things I needed to do to get it back. Like, I'm fine. I actually, like, the felony was hard to deal with at first because, you know, every time you get to fill out a job application, now you're writing, are you a convicted felon? Yes. Like, I have to write that. But that was embarrassing as shit. But then over time I realized that like who I am is not that. And these people that I was working for, I was a nanny, I worked at an ice cream place, I was a server, you know, I did all kinds of things. And no one seemed to care. Like, I would be honest with these people and tell them what happened, and they're like, sounds like some dumb teenage shit. Like, whatever, please take care of our children. We trust you. Like, we know we can trust you with our kids. So it didn't affect me, like, on paper too much. I couldn't vote, you know. Like, if I wanted to buy a firearm, I don't think I can. Maybe in the state of Florida now, because I live in Florida now. But, yeah, it's been definitely weird knowing that I'm a felon. I forget about it all the time.
Okay. Did you ever get into hard drugs? Or alcohol or anything like that?
I've never had a problem with alcohol. I never had like an addiction problem with drugs, but before I went to the programs, like I was dabbling in pretty much everything I could find right until I went there, because I was so like, fuck you, mom, for thinking that I'm doing drugs, so I'm gonna do them now. And I also just like wanted to escape the prison of her home. That was, and the only way was to just like lose my mind. So I've done like heroin, I did crack, cocaine, I did real cocaine, like all the hallucinogens, which I fully still support those, you know, just for medicinal purposes. And like, after I left the program, I feel like I still dabbled in things to figure out, like, because I'm not anti like psychedelics, you know. I kind of was trying to figure out like what might help me, and so I dabbled a lot in taking shrooms for medicinal reasons, and then I just did too many of them. Like, it got to a dark place, and I stopped doing those. And then I started doing acid for medicinal reasons, and that really helped a lot. Like, acid really cleared my brain. And then I would say ketamine has been the most helpful thing to me. And that was something that I discovered after the program, and it was like really cool. Like, I was able to like disassociate on my terms, and like go to a different place in my head that I wanted to go to instead of being forced to. But I don't do any of those things anymore, and it's just because of what I do for work now. I own a children's competitive dance studio, and like I'm with kids all day, so I can't really be like disassociating or not be like just fully there, you know, because it just could get dangerous with what they do, like tumbling and stuff. And yeah, but and also like I still will smoke weed if I need to. It's legal in Florida for medical card holders and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I finally saw a psychiatrist not too long ago for the first time, because I've been really scared to like talk to a therapist, because therapists are bad, in my opinion. Like, that's what I was taught. Like, that's my experience with them, that they just like tell you that you're wrong and stuff. And he asked me like, had anything traumatic happened in my life? And I remember being like, no, not really, you know, like I couldn't think of anything. And he was like, nothing like in your teenage like years or anything like that. And I was like, and he was like, you wrote down here like on your paperwork, you know, that your dad died. And I was like, oh yeah, that happened. And then he was like, did anything else like come of that? Like, were you destroyed by that? And I was like, no, actually, now that I think about it, like, I was like, I did have something traumatic to me. And it was like, sounds really mean to say this, but going to Turnabout Ranch was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me, way more than my dad dying. And he knew obviously from the media attention it has gotten what it was. And he was like, oh my God, you went there? Like, totally, like, made my feelings feel valid for once. Like, a real psychiatrist, you know, told me, like, you know, that is trauma. Like, what you went through and you just described is horrible. And that's why you're having these panic attacks, and that's why you have high anxiety. That's why you can't sleep probably and are having nightmares about people taking you out of your bed or taking you from your workplace and handcuffing you, is probably because of that. And so I was recently prescribed Xanax for panic attacks, and it's been the most helpful thing out of anything that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, just be careful with that because it can be addicting in itself.
Yeah, for sure. And it's weird because I like when I was doing all of those real like drugs before, like, and even if I drink, like I never have a problem. Like just when I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? But being around the kids, like sometimes that can be really like therapeutic and other times really stressful, with the dance competitions and stuff. So that's mostly when I get the most stressed out and it all comes back, is like probably right before a dance competition or an important event and stuff like that. And that's when I'll take them, is when I feel like, like I can't breathe all of a sudden. And I've never had anything just make me be able to breathe again. In addition, with several other things like a beta blocker that he prescribed me for my other job, which is solar panel work. And it just like, apparently the way it works, I didn't know much about them before I was prescribed, is like it just makes your voice come off more calm, even if you're really stressed out.
Okay. If you could go back in a time machine and not go through these places, would you do it, and why, knowing what you know now?
It's hard to say, because obviously I would rather have never been through that, like quite obviously, but at the same time, I know, and I've always known from the second that I got sent there, that I was sent there for a reason, and it was not because of me, but it was because like I knew I was strong and I knew I could make it through, and I knew it was fucked up from the beginning, and my whole life's purpose ever since then has been to make sure that no other kid, as much as I can, has to go there. And that if anyone's gonna like try to shed light on it, like I would do everything I could within my grasp and hands reach. So yes and no, because I wasn't one of the kids who, got a horrible drug addiction afterwards, or like so many sad stories of people passing away from taking their own lives afterwards, or just all these really, really, really horrible things. Like that didn't end up happening to me for whatever reason. So since I am still here, I want to like do something about it, and that's the only reason that I'm happy that I went. The only reason.
Okay. Do you have kids?
No, I have 2 dogs. One of them just has been sleeping by me the whole time.
Nice.
But yeah, no actual kids of my own. I just spend a lot of time with my kids at the studio, and I call them mine because like I spend so much time with them, like at least 5 hours a day, 6 days a week or more, and we do overnight trips, and like I don't know. I just try to make them like, I try so hard to make everything fun and like non-traumatic in a like competitive environment, because I just like want them to have a childhood that I just feel like I was robbed of,
Totally. Have you talked to your parents about how it felt to be there? Have they seen the program? You kind of touched on that a bit with your mom. I'm just curious where you're at with your parents. I've forgiven my parents, but I'll never forget what they did to me. My dad, I'm not even going to have him watch the program because he has Alzheimer's, and he already asked me every single time if Spring Creek ruined me or if I thought it helped me. So the fact that he feels guilty about that already, I just don't want to do that. Plus he was one of the people that didn't want me to go. My mom pretty much held divorce over his head, and they ended up getting divorced anyways, but she was like, if you don't go along with this, I'm just going to get a divorce. And they've been married 20 years. So that's where I'm at with my parents. Where are you at with your parents?
First of all, I'm so sorry. That's so horrible. Yeah, I never talked to her about it. I pretty much didn't talk to my mom for a really long time afterwards at all. Like I didn't trust her at all. I thought she was a demon, like the worst kind of person. Because it's like weird. Like not only did she send me to 2 places, but she sent my sister to 2 places too. And I got to watch that. So I hated her for a really long time, especially because I did try to initiate the conversation about it pretty much immediately. Like when I turned 18, and I got in contact with her, I told her, like, are you ready to apologize to me? I wasn't nice about it at all. I was like, are you ready to apologize to me for what you put me through? Because what happened at midterm was fucked up, and like, you know that. And that was like the one that I was holding on to because it was the one that she got to see. I mean, they told her to leave early, and they told me that my mom didn't want to be with me, and that's why and then I had to like lie to her. It was crazy. And she fully still believed in the program. She was like, no, I saw what it did for your sister. Like, but my sister was scared shitless. Like, she was totally brainwashed by them. And that's why she stayed at hers after she turned 18. So my mom didn't get it. And I think that, like, my mom always would ask me, like, why won't you talk to me? Why do you hate me so much? And it's because she, like, didn't understand. And it took a long time to understand that that's why I resented her. Because I was like, there's got to be something else, you know? But it was just like the years of trauma before the program with her and the way that we never got along in the first place. And then the program. And she, whenever I brought it up, it was full defense of her own self. It was like, you made me do this to you, Taylor. And not only did you make me do this to you, you're fucking lying about it to make me feel guilty. And I'm not gonna feel guilty. And can't you just, she would always say, like, just move on. Like, just get over it. Like, focus on the present and, like, the future. Like, why do you just live in the past? And it was like, I don't. Like, I've had so many rad experiences in the past 13 years. Like, so much rad stuff has happened to me, but underneath all of that, like, my relationships are affected, even my friendships, like, with everyone, by the way that I've been programmed to unconditionally, like I'm not, or unconsciously, sorry, think. Like, I didn't think that they were able to brainwash me, but I've been, like, working on it, and it's obvious that it comes out in my relationships in the way that I'm so controlling over everything because I want control over my own life. So, nope, didn't talk to her for a long time. My sister talked to her because my sister's just way stronger than I am, and also she felt guilt. She felt like my mom would be lonely and not have anybody. And so I talked to my sister about the program, and my sister is super supportive and cool. But no, my mom wouldn't talk to me, and when I've tried to initiate several times over the past 13 years, she shut it down immediately and just victim blamed me and shit. And then when the documentary came out on whatever day it was last week, I was actually really stoked to watch it because I've been following all of my friends that I met through these groups online that have been, like, there for me. And I knew that this was in the works, and I was really excited for her to make it. I was super proud and shit, and I wanted to support it, and it was just, like, exciting. So I watched the whole thing, like, all the way through. I watched it immediately, and I felt so good after I watched it. So good. Like, it was traumatizing to watch all the shit happen, but when it was over, and, like, just knowing that it was shut down, and, like, all the work she did, and that she, like, if she could make it possible to make that big of a light shed on the T.T.I, that, like, I can do it too if she can do it. And so I felt really empowered. And then there was that scene where she's talking to her old therapist on the phone, and it was a he or she was like, what do you want from me after all this time? Like, what do you want from me? And I remember her being like, I rewound it like 30 times and watched it. She was like, I want you to call my dad and tell him that you lied to him. Like, I just want you to tell my dad that you're a liar and that what you said about me wasn't true. And then there's a therapist or a psychologist or someone that talked and said, if your parents are telling you to just get over it, that means that they genuinely have no idea what you went through still, no matter how much time has passed. And that was kind of what pushed me to, like, talk to my mom about it. Because I was like, hell no, like, my mom will not watch this. So I texted her and I said, hey, there's this documentary out, it would mean a lot to me if you could somehow bring yourself to watch it. It's really tough to watch, like, even for me, so it probably will be for you too. But it's on Netflix. It's really accessible. Like, if you could just watch some of it, it would mean a lot to me. The girl that made it took a lot of time making it and put a lot of energy into it, and it's really well done. And she responded and said, nope. And then she responded again to nothing and said, I will not. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then in the middle of the night, I was like doing work on my phone for my studio, and I just like had this random feeling like, just finally just lay it on her. I'm 30 years old, like, who cares? So I texted my mom a picture of me in the program, and it's like a really bad picture of me where it's clear that something is horribly wrong. And I texted it to her, and I was like, yo, I just wish that like one day you could actually just listen to me and like hear what I have to say, and not interrupt me, and not like do the whole like guilt trip thing, and just not feel all that shame and guilt. Because what you don't realize, and what I just realized after watching this documentary, is that, yeah, I lived that shit for 13, or not 13 years. I mean, I've been living through it for 13 years, but I lived it in real life. But you were also played too. You were lied to, and you were manipulated. And maybe that's why you've never come to terms with it, is because you've not realized that. And then she texted me back and said, I will absolutely talk to you about this on the phone, but not over text. And I was like, okay. And then I called her, and she apologized to me and told me she was sorry. And this was just a few days ago, for the first time ever in her life. And then she told me she would be willing to help me. So figure out like what to do.
Awesome. And I see you started a podcast. Do you want to plug your podcast?
Yeah, sure. So the first episode, and the only episode I have out right now, is obviously super important to me. And I want to thank you, because the way that I was able to create this podcast in my mind and like be able to ask the right questions was from your podcast. And just like, I feel like you're very like validating to people, and it's like just letting them tell their truth and their story. And that was really hard, because the first person I had on was my mom, and I interviewed my mom. So that's the first episode if you go to it, but I'm interviewing some other people coming up soon, and it's going to be specifically about Turnabout Ranch. So if you're a Turnabout Ranch survivor that's been on his podcast, and you want to be on mine and just talk about just straight up Turnabout, feel free to hit me up. It's called Turnabout Ranch Survivors Speak, and it's on Spotify and Anchor, I believe, and I think a few other places that you can get your podcasts.
Okay, and also people, not just people that have been on my podcast, but anybody, right?
Yeah, anybody. I just don't want to take away, like, I want people to do everything. Like, tell your story as many times as you can,
Yeah.
on every platform. So, yeah, definitely, like, hit him up, because it feels good to tell your story, especially to another survivor that understands.
For sure, definitely. All right. What do you think you needed? What do you think you needed instead of being sent away? Like, what would have helped you, do you think?
I talked to my mom about that too. I asked her like alternative options that she would do if she went back in time or whatever, like something along the lines of that. And she was like, there's pretty much nothing I can think of. She was like, the only thing I think I could have done is just let you go. Like, you were 17, like, you're smart, like, that's all true. Like, and I think I agree with her. I was 17, and I knew how to take care of myself, because my mom was incapable of taking care of herself to her fullest abilities when my dad died. It rocked her world. And so I was pretty much just like independent my whole life since I was 8. So I knew what to do. I knew how to, get a job. I could have let myself be staying in school, and not had this whole traumatic experience happen, if I think that she would just let me have lived with my friends who were offering to let me live there with their parents. But she had tried making me see therapists when I was a little kid, and they were all Christian, horrible. Like, they didn't help me do anything. They made me feel horrible about myself, just like the programs. And both the therapists there and the ones at home told me things like it was my fault that my dad died of cancer, which makes no sense. So, yeah, I don't think therapy for me personally would have been an option unless my mom had been open-minded at the time to find a very like non-biased, very liberal, medium, monotone, like neutral therapist that was like really good at like breaking down the issues between the parent and the child and not just blaming it on the child. But besides that, I think all I really wanted was freedom. And I don't think that I would have taken it too far. And I'm being like super genuine. Like, I really don't. I think I was just like pushing the envelope because I didn't give a fuck what happened to me anymore because she wouldn't let me do anything. So I was just doing whatever.
Okay. And let's see. Fuck, I just had the question in my head. Was there anybody else who ran besides you when you were at these places?
Yeah, people ran all the time at Heartlight. That was super common. Like, I heard we didn't ever see the boys or really the other levels. Like, I don't remember, but one time being in a room with other levels, and it was for some sort of like annual gathering. But I heard about boys running all the time. Don't know how that word got through the grapevine. Like I said, my roommate would run all of the fucking time, and sometimes she brought random people with her. She always got sent back. At Turnabout, we were told that if we ran, like we would die, we would get eaten by coyotes, that we would probably break all of our arms and legs, and that we wouldn't get sent to the hospital. Um, lots of people came up with like plans to do that, so they would get sent to the hospital. But we were told that if we did that, we wouldn't go to the hospital. We would just go back to the circle. And eaten by coyotes, like the number one thing they told us. But people did still try to run, and they were pretty much tackled and restrained immediately at Turnabout, at least.
Okay, and I got two more questions for you. One, what was the worst thing that you saw or heard about at these places? And then the second one would be, was there anything at all positive that you gained from either of these places?
Anything what?
Anything at all positive that you gained from these places? And if not, it's totally fine.
Yeah, the positive things that I gained from them is my friend, who is then Leah, now they're Lou, from Heartlight, the one that I ran with. They're like the coolest person, like so rad. I've seen them in person since then, one time, and it was like magical. Like, it was so cool to just see them outside, and like we were like, we can do whatever we want, like we can run or jump or like whatever, that was awesome. That friendship will never like be erased, and I've needed them this entire 13 years, and they were younger than me, but they were still always there for me. So I super appreciate them. Like, I hope they're listening, and if they do, I love the shit out of you. And then also just there was a friend that I made at Turnabout. Like I said, I've never been able to locate her really much longer past the program. I talked to her once afterwards, I think. But I cherish that friendship as well. And then besides that, like, the positive things I learned were like, and I don't attribute it to them. I want to be clear about that. It was like my strength that I have inside of me, and it was not because of them, it was in spite of them. And that was positive. Like, I learned how to be alone for a really long time and like sit with myself and like come up with really good ideas. Not the things they wanted me to focus on, but just like random good ideas, or like just like love myself when people were telling me that I was a piece of shit. And then the other question was, what was the worst thing that happened or I saw happen?
Or heard about it, yeah.
There was a child who took their life at Heartlight. I think it was like 2 months after I left. At Turnabout Ranch, this is super important too, and I'm glad that you asked because I can say this on a public forum now, and it's going to be really controversial, so I'm going to stay very neutral on how I feel about this. But when Danielle Bergoli was there, Bad Baby, like I said, it's a small group of people. She actually watched this happen. There was a young gentleman named Clay Brewer, and he was in Impact. And he lost his mind on Impact. To my knowledge, this is all, again, just so I clarify, opinionated based on the facts that I read that are still kind of foggy. I could be wrong on some of these facts, but he murdered a staff member, a night staff, in the morning, trying to run away, and they wouldn't let him have the keys to the car. He said he didn't want to hurt them, and he bludgeoned them accidentally to death, and then hurt another staff member, and then stole the car, and was apprehended by police. All I'm going to say about it, to justify how I feel about it, is that when he was apprehended by the police, he tried to pretend that he had guns on him. And when asked why, he said, so that you would fatally shoot me so I wouldn't have to go back to the circle. And that young man is, I believe, sentenced to 16 years to life in prison. And he was a teenager. And just going from the circle to prison, I can't imagine. That's a pretty shitty thing that happened for everyone. Someone lost their life. Children watched a murder happen and got no treatment or therapy for that. And then a young kid lost his future because of that. But yeah, besides that, what went on with me and at Turnabout, just the whole experience of being emotionally just like abused constantly and deprived of food, sleep, water, general hygiene, and like anything that a normal person needs was horrible. But watching that little girl be so abused at Turnabout, the one that had to bleach her feet and eat her own vomit and was constantly restrained, that was really, really, really impactful on me. Like, that was fucked up. And then at Heartlight, they just treated my friend, the one who ran all the time, horribly because she ran all the time.
Okay. Is there anything else you want people to know about your experience, or anything that you might tell a parent thinking about sending their kid to a place like this? Or actually, hold on. Before that, knowing what you know now, is it your belief that these schools should or even could be fully regulated, or is it your belief that they should all just be shut down?
Shut down.
Yeah.
There's no amount of regulation that will ever come close to making them good. Like, the people who work here are sadistic, and I can say that wholeheartedly, because if you're a grown adult watching things like this happen, or even knowing that they're happening, and you are not doing anything about it, but you're still nice to the kids and like you're not going out of your way to make someone's life miserable, you're complicit. And you're not doing anything, and you're not advocating for children. You're just sitting there watching shit happen. And so no matter what kind of regulations are put on these places, like, I truly believe that they get off on abusing children. It is in their eyes, it's obvious. And so, especially in Utah, like, a lot of the work I tried to do in the beginning was to call the health department and report child abuse. I did it a lot. I called a bunch of lawyers and advocates for teens and LGBTQ and all of the different places that would advocate for kids stuck in these facilities. And they did everything they could too. And every time we hit a dead end, because the government doesn't want to regulate these places. And I believe that even if they did have those regulations, they're so full of money. I did the math yesterday on Turnabout, and to my knowledge, in 2010, I think they made about $3.1 million in 1 year off of these children. So there's just no way, like, there's no way that they could be regulated enough to not spend their money in the right places to make sure that it was good. Because there is actually one thing I want to say that I did forgot. On my first day of Roundy Impact, the health department showed up for their surprise check. And I was brought inside the cabin while they were there and told to sit at the table and pretend to eat. And I was told that if I did not do that, and if I made eye contact, we were all told this, eye contact, if I was asked questions by the authorities that were the health department, which was just one lady, or tried to get help, you know, tried to like be like, help me, get me out of here, anything like that, that we would be in serious shit and that we'd be in the circle for the rest of our lives. And so I was brought inside while she was there, and the kids who were on work like chopping wood and skinning poles and like breaking ice with their bare knuckles and shit, they were all brought inside and told to sit at the table, and those kids could eat because they were level 2. I was told to pretend to eat. So I know that they're shady, like, you know what I mean? I feel like the only way to stop it is to just shut them all down entirely. Because also when I feel like one gets shut down, I feel like they just rebrand as a different group.
Yeah. Yep, whack-a-mole. Okay, is there anything else you want people to know about your experience, or anything you might tell a parent thinking about sending their kid away?
I just want to say that it was horrible. I'm okay now. Like, I'm able to live a normal life. It's just that not many people understand outside of our small group of troopers that went. Like, no one will really ever understand what it was like. And I want people to know that this is not just like some rich white kid bullshit that happens to the upper class. Like, this happens to everyone. Happens to all kinds of kids, age, gender, race, like wealth status, no matter what. Like, it happens to all the kinds of kids, and they're kids, so it's wrong no matter what. And no matter how rich your child is or how privileged, like, we all know Paris Hilton's story at this point. She was very privileged and very rich, and that does not mean that her abuse was right, you know? So even if you think it's a rich white kid problem, that it's a problem. And then I would tell parents who want to send their kids there to, like, please do every bit of research you can. Look up the facility and then write the word abuse at the end of it on your Google search, and you're guaranteed to see stuff of every facility. I guarantee it. And then, you know, what you could do is, I know therapy has worked for some people. Like, look out for a good therapist that's like a family therapist. If there's a serious drug issue, do a real drug rehab program, a real one with like 5 stars, with real testimonials that they're allowed to give that are good and bad. Because when people only want to give you the good testimonials, that means something's up. So I would just like talk to your child too, because probably they just want to be heard and listened to by their parent and not feel like they have to lie to them.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and being brave. And if you've watched this video so far, please hit the like, share these videos, share them to everybody. Send them to everybody in your friends list. Just do that. And yeah, just get the word out there. We're about to become monetized on this channel, so it's fucking insane. So yeah.
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 Good job.
So let's just keep on sharing and kicking ass.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast too, and also thank you for making one and for sticking around and doing so much that you've done over the years, because like, people need to hear this, and you get listens, and that means that people are listening and watching, you know.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, if anybody's interested in sharing their stories, straightoutofbs@gmail.com, straightoutofbspodcast@gmail.com. And we will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
All right, bye.